Hey traders, Raghee here, and in this recap video I want to introduce a layout to you, and this was actually the topic of the member webinar for Simpler Futures today, and this is actually a mainstay in our chat room, and I want to share it with you because I think it's really helpful to view the markets in this way. Number one, let's all for a moment accept that ETFs and futures index contracts are a made-up thing. They're really just made up, and what they're made up of are stocks, right? So if I'm looking at the XLY or the XLP, or if I'm looking at S&P futures, really if you crack those open, what you see is a whole bunch of stocks. So therefore, if we're trading ETFs, obviously we're stock traders, but if you're trading S&P futures, you're also a stock trader. You're trading a contract that really is just made up of different weightings of different stocks. So one of the layouts that I find really helpful is to use the color coding of the grab candles, which is a free tool, and taking the heavily weighted names of that ETF, or in this case of the S&P futures contract, and laying it out on this setup. Now, if you find 11 charts is too much, you can look at the top 9, like so. If you think 9 is too much, you can look at the top 6. So it doesn't have to be necessarily, this kind of overwhelming layout that some of you might find, well, that's wrong, that's just too many charts. But I like looking at as many that I can comfortably view. Now, comfortably view is the real important part here, because the way in which, the reason that I can make an assessment about the strength, the neutral, or the weakness of a chart so quickly is because of the grab candles. Doesn't matter the time frame. So the way in which I do this is make sure that I can see very clearly what the dominant color of the grab candles are on any stock. Realize that an uptrend without consistent green grab candles is impossible. A downtrend without consistent red grab candles is impossible. In fact, if you see predominantly green, you're probably looking at some semblance of either a fresh trend or an established trend that's up. Not always an established, but it could be the culmination of a lot of bullish sentiment and momentum, right? If the grab candles remain red or dominantly red, you're dealing with bearishness, okay? So the reason I can quickly also ascertain whether or not certain names are relative performance leaders or laggards, again, goes right back to the grab candles. If the S&P is green and I've got Apple still red on the daily time frame, laggard, right? Same thing with J&J. Same thing with Exxon, right? If I've got this S&P moving up higher, Microsoft's moving well with it, Amazon's moving well with it, Facebook, who else? JP Morgan's doing okay, Google's doing okay, but at a glance, Bank of America took off after earnings, but at a glance, I can tell very quickly who my relative performance leaders are to the upside and to the downside. That's the way I look at it. Because sometimes the weakest stocks are really helpful. Because if the market turns over, I'm going to go short those. Which brings me to a point that I want everyone to think about. Your watch list for things you want to buy, Forex, futures, ETF stocks, doesn't matter. Your watch list for things you want to buy cannot look like your watch list for things you want to sell. Because your watch list for things you want to buy should be predominantly relative performance leaders to the upside. And things you want to sell should be relative performance leaders to the downside. Okay, so think about that. And then also we can extend that same mentality to sectors, right? We can break each futures contract down to the sectors and find out which sectors are leading, which sectors are lagging, because the sectors too will point us to a very specific list of stocks. Which brings me back to, if you're trading ETFs or futures index contracts, you are trading stocks. Best to know what stocks are heavily weighted, who's participating, who's not, as well as the sectors. Check out these layouts, start using the grab candles to determine relative performance, and I think you're going to love what you get. This is something we do each and every day in the room to kick off where we want to focus buys and sells, and I think it's going to really be a needle mover for you. Hope it helps. I'll see you in the next update.